have had sushi before? All right, if you take a look around you, that's basically almost everyone. But this was not the case nearly 5 to 6 decades ago. So in the 1950s in the United States, for daring to eat raw fish, you, sir, would have been pegged as adventurous, or peculiar, or crazy. And unfortunately, so is the reaction today to the idea of eating insects, informally as entomophagy. And so my goal today is to shed some light on the reality of eating insects, just as food for thought. And so if we take a moment and just contemplate our aversion towards eating bugs, it's actually a pretty curious phenomenon, because it wasn't so long ago that we had the same sort of aversion or apprehension or disgust towards other foods like lobsters, oysters, and shrimp. But now all of those things are considered delicacies, so what gives? Because at the end of the day, isn't eating a lobster more or less the same as eating a beetle? Just one that can swim and do a little breaststroke here and there? And the truth of the matter is, so many people in the world are already doing this. In fact, according to the United Nations, 2 billion people in the world are already consuming over 1,000 species of insects. Now, to put that number in perspective, that means for every Facebook user out there, there are almost 2 bug eaters. Sorry, I'm going to take a moment. And so, I know what you're probably thinking at this point. You're thinking, okay, insects make honey for us, and our rainforests would all but collapse without them, but I would never eat bugs. I'm at the top of the food chain. I am the alpha male. I don't need to venture down the food chain to find my food. But the truth of the matter is, you already eat bugs, and I can prove that to you. So, if anybody has had, so for reference, 100 grams is about the size of a stick of butter. And if anybody has had peanut butter this week, congratulations. Because the average peanut butter sample deemed safe for human consumption by the Food and Drug Administration contains 30 or more insect fragments per 100 grams. 100 grams. Now, if you're not a peanut butter fan, don't worry, I've got you covered. Because wheat flour rolls in at 150 insect fragments per 100 grams. But the reigning food product by far, it's something on all of our dinner tables, and it's ground pepper with 950 insect fragments per 100 grams. Really makes you think twice about what's making that salt and pepper chip crunch now, doesn't it? So if at this point you're not feeling antsy, you can look up more facts and figures for other products such as chocolate or cornmeal or coffee in the defects levels handbooks, all online open to the public. And so I'm willing to bet that most of us have had at least one of these foods before. And maybe some of us have had all 3 today, in which case I invite you to tune me out now and go back to playing Flappy Birds because you're already on my side. But to the skeptics, look at us here. We are consuming so many of these supposedly dangerous insects in our daily lives, but we're doing okay. In fact, Brian Fisher, an entomologist from the California Academy of Sciences, says, genetically speaking, insects are so far removed from humans that there's almost 0 chance for us to get a disease by eating a bug. And to me, that sounds like some pretty good odds if you compare it to, say, the mad cow disease. So now perhaps we've reached the point where we're thinking, okay, so there are a few creepy crawlies in my food and I'm a grown-up, I can deal with this. It's okay, but what do I stand to gain by munching on a cricket? Well, a lot actually, and the following numbers that I'll throw at you come from EXO, which is actually a startup founded by Brown's very own alums, Gabby Lewis and Greg Sevitz. And what they do is make protein bars with, among other things, ground up cricket flour. So to first just set up the baseline, you and I need around 50 to 60 grams of protein every day to function. To think, to focus, get work done, daydream about giving a TED talk. And if we take 100 grams again, but this time of dried crickets, we get 69 grams of protein, more iron than than 100 grams of beef, and calcium levels rivaling that of milk. Now, to me, that sounds like we're taking all of the vitamin shop supplements and injecting it into nature's very own multivitamin, just in the form of a cricket. And for the sustainability advocates out there, based on a United Nations report released last May, crickets need 12 times less feed than cattle to produce the same amount of protein. Furthermore, whereas less than half of a cow can be used for food, since we can't do much with the bones and internal organs, 80% of a cricket can be used. Add on to that the fact that crickets breed faster than cows and don't emit as much greenhouse gases, and require less water than other meat substitutes such as corn and soy to grow. According to that same report, by year 2050, Earth's population is estimated to be 9 billion. The report says that in order to accommodate that number, we'll have to almost double food production. That means we'll have to start looking into alternative, sustainable sources of food, as we are already overfishing and land is scarce for further development in agriculture. As our numbers boom, we need to transform and redefine how we look at food. And with all of this in mind, we clearly have a winner on the entomophagy front. And so hopefully by this point, this whole idea of bug eating isn't sounding way too crazy. And so I'd like to bring us back in time again to the 1960s to our old friend sushi. So again, it wasn't until around the 60s that the Western world began embracing sushi, and that was only because a sushi chef in California, in Los Angeles, created the California roll. So what he realized was that the Western world was afraid of sushi because of the seaweed on the outside, because the seaweed was black. So what he did was take rice and put it on the outside instead, and added a familiar flavor, the avocado, on the inside. And so now that the sushi looked more approachable, the Western world ate it up, even though technically the components of the sushi didn't change much. And so a similar trend is actually happening in entomophagy, which brings us to the final issue of taste. So at this point, we intellectually understand that insects are sustainable and safe and nutritious, but how do they taste? So I can't say that I've tried all of the insects in the world because I obviously haven't, but over winter break I was able to get my hands on some cricket flour. And for reference, cricket flour is exactly what it sounds like. Crickets, dried, roasted, and milled into fine powder. And I've got to say that cricket flour, which I had a spoonful of, basically tastes like how ground up salted almonds would taste. If you sprinkle some on your pudding, you don't have to just call it a dessert anymore, or if you dump some in your blender, you've got yourself a post-workout shake. And in fact, some startups are already tapping into the nutritional aspects of entomophagy. So if you're like me and you have a sweet tooth, Six Foods in Cambridge is making cakes and cookies from cricket flour. And in New York, EXO is fine-tuning its protein bar recipes with a 3 Michelin star restaurant chef. So all of these options could be ways for us to get our protein on the go without worrying about our gluten or dairy or grain or soy allergies. And so I leave you today with the hope that you'll give insect-based foods a chance, because insects could, and probably will, become a legitimate source of sustenance for our bodies. And I have a challenge for you to not only rethink what counts as food, but to act on it. You sushi-loving trailblazers, you should go out there and try some cricket cookies or bars, or even better, instead of those oily French fries, serve some high-protein roasted mealworms at your next Super Bowl party. Because it won't be long before we all take after the Lion King and Hakuna Matata anyway, so why not start now? Thank you.